What is going on, guys? We're back at it again with another Worlds 2023 draft analysis featuring the Swiss stage. We're at the 2-0 round breakdown here between G2 and Gen G, both teams being up for promotion in this case. In this video, we've opted to go for game 1 as the main analysis, as it is probably the more interesting game that they've gone over in recent time. So, kicking off with the first bans, we see a G2 actually go for a very heavy priority on jungle bans here, most likely indicating that they want to go for a slower style composition. They've removed a lot of the guaranteed engage tools and things like the Vi and Jarvan, meaning that the viability of immobile champions or champions with less safety tools are actually more viable. So the classic Zyra Rakan is very possible still, but in terms of its overall value against these champions, it's not as high. With that being said, we're getting some classic bans against G2 as well. Hansama getting some insane draft resources for the team there, with both the Draven ban being his specialty as well as the Kalista. Genji also banned against the Orianna opener. So we see a bit of an different open from G2 here as they prioritize Maokai. This is probably in combination with the previous jungle bans leading to their open, and honestly it's still a decent pick because it is able to function in any scenario. Still very solid jungler. Like, there's not many other options here except for things like Liss and Sejuani and things of that nature with how many champions that are gone, so it's not very surprising. So Gen G respond with a pretty autopilot Zyra Rakan 1-2. Nothing too wrong with it, I would say. It's decently strong, and G2 actually respond with the Ezreal. It's a pretty decent pick because of the idea that Ezreal can play its range traditionally, and then they actually blind Lissandra. Normally, a champion like Lissandra is actually pretty raw, and especially in the B3 slot. It's not a very blindable mid laner. It's a little bit abnormal, right? Think about it. It has very prominent weaknesses. It's pretty short range. It's more of a combat mage, so let's keep that in mind as it gives something for Gen G to think about. They respond in kind with the R3 in terms of the matchups by getting something like the Silas. So it forces Gen G to thin their jungle pool even further, and pretty much top laners are open across the board. So we might see 1 or 2 bans come from each side total in order to respond to the top side pressure, but I don't think it's going to be too much. Yeah, it's very classic red side bans to prevent the most blindable picks, as well as blue side probably choking out any champions that can prevent this potential range and disengage comp that G2 is certainly going for right now. The main thing to keep in mind though is that Gen G are currently set up to have pretty strong matchups across the board. It's probably going to be a problem for them in this. Let's see more of the bans come out. Gen G just respond with the standard jungler on 4 as and slips through. So to be honest, with all that jungle pressure that they had, I don't really think that Gen G is too mad about the situation they've been put in, right? Lee Sin has a soft weakness, I guess, against champions like Lissandra and Maokai, but it's nothing major at all. And this is where we see their big pivot, right? Why was the Lissandra B3 picked so early? It's very abnormal for teams to kind of just let that happen. And this is where we switch things up. They actually slam the Tristana to get a great matchup into mid, and then shift the Lissandra into support. The answer top. So what are we looking at here? So let's start with Gen G's comp. It's very much about the chaos and individual success of each of the laners, and then being able to thrive in that chaos in order to create weird timings around the map, right? We have the Silas with not too many decent ultimates to grab, especially with the role swap from Liss. Along that Ezreal poke. the main thing we're looking to see in terms of criteria for success here is how G2 are going to be able to use more area. It's a lot harder to pilot because there's a lot more room for execution on the side of Genji. They can mess up a bit. So because of that, I would probably favor this towards Genji. Hopefully this was insightful to you guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.